Hello everybody, how are you going? Welcome back to some more Historica Canada videos, the same people that produce and make the excellent Heritage Minutes, the famed Heritage Minutes some might even add. And so this is going to be the Ojibwe woman who invented the baby jumper.
Growing up, I often helped my aunties care for their children.
Fair enough.
Ojibwe used dikkinaganan to carry babies for thousands of years, as they had many practical uses. Secure in a dikkinagan, a baby could observe the world around them and be comforted or soothed. When I had my own children, I needed something like a dikkinagan, something that worked inside my home. My design needed to be different. It allowed the baby's legs to dangle freely, and I put a spring in so he could bounce on his own.
Right.
All 7 of my children used the baby jumper.
Whoa.
And I knew that one day their children would use it too. So I made constant improvements to the design. Eventually, when my children were grown, they pushed me to patent the invention, and we created a successful family business.
Olivia Poole was one of the first Indigenous women in Canada to patent an invention. Drawing on traditional Indigenous knowledge, her timeless innovation has offered an extra hand to generations of grateful parents across Canada and around the world.
Absolutely. At first I was going, okay, baby jumper. I didn't really know exactly what she was talking about, but as soon as we get to see, where is it? That guy right there, just bouncing, having a great whale of a time, just hanging from the roof, I knew exactly what they were talking about. And obviously there has been 1,000,001 reinventions and redesigns since then, I'm sure as well. Plenty of different knockoff brands, but I wonder what the pattern actually includes. Is it the technique in terms of something hanging from the ceiling? What is it exactly? Because I want to know who actually owns this patent now, as it sadly said that she passed away in, I believe it was 1973? Actually no, coming back to here it does say 1975, but either way my question still does stand. Where does that patent now lie? Because the entire kind of mantra of this product, if you want to call it that, and everything else surrounding it, seemed to be passing it down from generation to generation, and so I hope that she also passed down that to her 7 children, for goodness sake. I mean, they're splitting it up between a pretty fair share, but I still do think that they would have been all right overall, just knowing how insanely popular this apparatus is. And I also just need to be coming back and listening to the name of the original device. What was it?
Ojibwe used dikkinaganan to carry babies.
Okay, well, I got the Ojibwe, but I'm not going to even attempt that. That didn't sound like my mouth could ever attempt to make those sounds, let alone actually produce them. And so that one I would definitely leave up to her. But regardless of the fact that for thousands of years, this secondary / prequel apparatus was used for so many different reasons, and I love the fact that it's just hung in a tree and all those different things where the baby, like they said, can just observe the world around them. Obviously then, like, even perceptually, like, you're hearing the birds and the animals, and you're in the tree, you hear the leaves, things are just around you and happening. It's nothing really startles you because nothing catches you off guard. You can see and you can hear. Whereas if you're just put up in a cot and a soundproof cage and bundled up, I'm sure you just don't have the same kind of connection to nature, and that's what so much of that living was about. So overall, I think that this entire storyline is fantastic, just taking those traditional, like they said, thousands of years of knowledge and applying it to modern, being 1910, problems. Just going, okay, I don't really know what I can do in my house. I don't have a tree that I can particularly attach to or anything like that, but I need something. And then even the fact that you're putting a spring in it so they can continue to have the movement and have the legs and build up all the strength in that regard. It's ingenious, and it's relatively the same still today, 100 years later, and it's virtually the same. It's just fantastic. Further, even just the fact that she was one of the first Aboriginal women to make a patent in Canada, like, that's an outrageous accomplishment in its own right, let alone the legacy that this product has. I'm blown away that it's designed by this. You never really can tell where these things come from. Sometimes they come from a lab, and sometimes they just come from human experience.
In 1912, the government of Ontario issued a regulation limiting French language teaching. Under Regulation 17, educators were permitted to teach in French just 1 hour a day, and only for the first 2 years of elementary school. The law was created in response to an influx of francophones to Ontario. It enraged the francophone communities, and eventually 2 sisters decided to resist. Beatrice and Diane Desloges began teaching at the Geek School in Ottawa in September of 1915. Immediately, they rejected Regulation 17 and continued to teach in French.
Fair enough.
The Petite Commission acting for the school board threatened to revoke their diplomas. Undaunted, the sisters persisted until the board stopped paying them and hired replacement teachers.
Wow.
Several parents withdrew their children from GIG, and the sisters began teaching in makeshift classrooms. But by January 1916, parents were fed up with the conditions in which their children were being educated and protested the government. On January 4th, 1916, 70 mothers, armed with hatpins, scissors, and other objects, occupied the GIG school to reinstate Beatrice and Diane, while 50 fathers stood guard outside. Tensions reached a boiling point on the morning of January 7th, when police set up a blockade to prevent the sisters from entering the school. Francophone parents pushed their way through the blockade and helped the sisters enter the school through an open window. The mothers were dubbed les gardiennes de GIG. They protected the school for several weeks after the initial Battle of the Hatpins, allowing Beatrice and Diane to conduct classes freely. These events sparked further protests. Thousands of students took to the streets in an ongoing show of resistance in Ottawa. Protests continued into the spring, and les gardiennes de GIG remained on watch until June.
Wow. What a story. That's an outrageous story. The fact that they were, commendable for the fact that they were that committed to the entire thing. But the fact that they were able to just sneak in through the back window, and then it sounded like they turned the school into a fort. Like, for weeks they occupied the thing, and no one could really do anything about it. I mean, to be fair, when you look at an image like this, I don't really know if I want to be on the front lines just facing off against that, between brooms, hatpins, which I read the title, but I didn't actually know what a hatpin was. I saw even the thumbnail, I was going, is that a hatpin? That's a rolling pin to me. So is a hatpin a rolling pin? Oh, no, it is literally a hatpin. See, that's more so what I would have thought, but every single time they said hatpin, they were talking about a rolling pin, so that's where I was getting double bluffed by the entire vocabulary of the entire thing. I mean, it also did make me laugh to think about the fact that the baby jumper is being invented on one side of Canada in one particular area, and then this is going on at the same time as well. Like, just worlds apart, but mere moments apart in terms of our contextual history lesson here, basically, from Historical Canada videos. They're incredible. You just learn so many random little things that there would be no otherwise reason for you to stumble across, really. But look, that certainly does not mean that they aren't influential things as well, as they even go on to say, I read it just before, following the Battle of the Hatpins, a large-scale government suppression of the Francophone teachers was never again attempted in Ottawa. And I wonder if there's an underline of Ottawa, and was it attempted elsewhere? I can certainly imagine, because Ottawa's going to be in Quebec, that's definitely going to be not the greatest place to be attempting such things, but was it attempted in other places as well? Was it already in, Nova Scotia, the West Coast? Where else was it possibly attempted? Because they seem to be very particular with the wording, because otherwise I reckon they would have said was never again attempted. And then even as we then get to see here, Regulation 17 was enforced in other Ontario districts until 1927, and it was finally repealed in 1944. The fact that it was that long, let's just call it 30 years of 1 hour a day up until year 2 is what I heard it as. And so, I don't really get why you would even just put a limit on it as 1 hour a day. Like, if you're trying to get rid of it, clearly you're trying to get rid of it, but why just not go, okay, none? Why 1 hour a day? Is it because you know that that's going to cause an immediate uprising and they were trying to see what they could get away with? Or was it some other thing where they just went, yeah, I guess we should probably just give them, 20%. Oh, and wow, then look at that. In 2016, the government of Ontario officially apologized for Regulation 17 and the negative impact it had on the Franco-Ontario identity and culture. Wow, that's a very unique and niche identity and culture to be saying, but regardless, I can understand how if everyone was very invested in this entire situation, and it makes sense. It's a direct personal attack on your culture and your language and everything else that you were kind of holding dear to yourself, especially, as they said, if you're having an entire population wave of more people moving in, and then you're also at the same time shutting the entire thing down, it would really feel as though you're quite in two minds about, well, I want to go be with my culture because everyone's there, but they're not letting our culture be our culture, so do I really want to go there? And it's going to be really messy. But hey, if nothing else, you certainly do just have to take your hat off, especially because the hat pins are out of the hat, so it's not holding it on your head anymore, but you have to take your hat off to these women and everyone, all 70 of them, I believe they said, standing up to the 50 police officers and just guys that are being in the wrong side of history, basically. There's some incredible people out there with some incredible stories that are standing up for what they believe is right. And you look back on it and you go, good on you. It's nothing short of that. Just good on you for standing up to that, because it is an identity crisis otherwise. People already had a little bit stripped away, but to lose it entirely, we're still dealing with problems like that today. So every single bit of culture we get to preserve, fantastic.
When the SARS epidemic hit Toronto, another outbreak followed. A media fever. SARS dominated the news as the mystery bug spread. Networks broadcast daily press conferences with doctors, public health officials, and conflicting messages. Newspapers printed as many as 25 articles a day about the disease.
Whoa, okay.
They frequently mentioned the disease's origins in China. Images of Asian populations wearing surgical masks were burned into public consciousness as a symbol of SARS. This flurry of alarming imagery and headlines suggested panic and confusion around the facts of the outbreak. The media's link between SARS and China stoked fear and discrimination against Toronto's Asian communities. But those images of masked crowds were taken in Asia, not Canada. The city's outbreak unfolded for the most part in hospitals, where the elderly, the ill, and healthcare workers were most at risk. There were 438 probable cases in Canada, resulting in 44 deaths. The outbreak was contained after a few months. But during these few months, the sheer volume of reporting overwhelmed. The public struggled with information overload. Many no longer read beyond the headlines, which only fed the widespread SARS panic. Facts are important, but so is context. Today, news moves even faster from an even wider variety of sources. It's more crucial than ever that we look beyond headlines or clickbait and view the facts, the context, and the full story in a time of crisis and fear. Question what you see, hear, and read. Think critically about the messages fighting for your attention.
Interesting. I have one question that lives above the rest of them, and I would need to know, when did this video come out? And I haven't even seen it yet, but let's just see. It came out 3 years ago. 3 years ago when? Oh my goodness, the 23rd of October 2019. That is outrageously timed. Oh man. Well then, obviously there is an entire other history now surrounding events like this, and I would say that no one really learnt anything from said events in terms of from 2003 as well. I mean, God, like the amount of social media progress and everything like that can truly just whirlwind things completely out of proportion, or completely more than anything ever could in 2003. You know, like they said, the newspapers were printing 25 articles a day, or 25 versions? Was it articles or versions of the paper? I don't even know how you deliver that many in a single day, if that is going to be the case. But then when there's no physical limit on the delivery of media anymore, things can, like I said, just get completely out of hand on both ends of the spectrum, regardless if it's real, fake, left, right, up, down, it doesn't matter. Of course, people are just immediately going to be, well, not desensitized to the entire thing, but just, like they said, completely overloaded with that level of information. No one's really built to take that level of information in on a single daily basis when it can be changing so rapidly as well, based on whatever may be presented at the time. And so I really had no idea where this entire thing was going to be going. At first I was going, okay, is it going to be a historical report about Canada's involvement in the entire thing? How did they win the war, so to say, whatever you want to be calling it? And then no, it turned into more of a discrimination act, and I was going, okay, I can understand how that would definitely be a thing that would be prevalent. We've seen that again. And then of course it just went ahead and took another turn as well, and as soon as I saw this phone I went, okay, I can recognize that this isn't brand new, but just the fact that they actually concluded by saying, check what you were actually reading. When you were that overloaded, try and decipher something out of it and just go, hang on, maybe this isn't gospel, maybe I should question this as well. And not to any degree where it's like a conspiracy theory, but just go, okay, I will get a second opinion from a secondary source that I trust. If it's literally that simple, then it might completely change your entire perspective or the context surrounding the entire topic. But to be fair, I think overall this was actually very well done, and even just lacking the context of the surrounding years, which it definitely, like I said, just hit the nail on the head in terms of probably the worst timing for it to come out in retrospect. But regardless, it actually did cover so many different things that you should just be keeping in mind. General public, like I said, multiple alleys of information. Maybe it's just having an open mindset about what things can definitely change within these obviously different times. And then even just the fact that every time that we seem to have one of these, both 2003 and then the previous 3 years, the discrimination thing, it's utterly disgusting, and I don't understand it. I don't understand how you can look at the other side of the world, which is dealing with the same thing you are, and blame that other side of the world. Like, is it that disconnected? I don't understand it whatsoever. It's utterly outrageous.